We've all been taught that human evolution was a straight line, but a recent discovery proved our ancestors coexisted with the very apes they evolved from. It was a tangled, bushy tree of life. So here's the question. What if that's happening all over again? Today we're talking about a new branch of the human family tree, from the rise of AI girlfriends to the shocking possibility of robotic wombs. Are we building a new species, and what does that make us? This is Brobots, the podcast that talks about how technology can be beneficial to your health and well-being, and tries to make peace with our evolution into human robot cyborgs. All right, so as we started talking about this, just a few days ago when we were recording, I made an offhanded joke about natural selection and how, it plays into all the things that are happening with the life around us, AI, robots, love affairs with robots. And it was kind of a throwaway line. And then I felt guilty about picking on the people that are going to die in the process of evolution. And now looking at these three articles that we're going to talk about today and putting them together, I'm realizing I'm probably one of the people that's going to die in the process of this evolutionary process with where things are going. You found a number of wildly interesting articles, and one of them at first glance I thought, oh wow, this is interesting, but not really a topic. But all of these will come together. You got to stick with us to make sense of all of this. Okay, so the first one comes from the Good News Network, basically saying that staggering finding shows early humans lived alongside the very apes that evolved from them. So scientists found teeth both of early humans and apes in the same place, showing that they lived together at the same time. This means that human history isn't a straight line of evolution, but more like a big bush with entangled species living side by side. So it's basically claiming that we lived alongside the very animals we evolved from.
Yeah, and we can actually go through, and if you've ever done DNA studies or checks, you can actually figure out how much Neanderthal you are. There's another subspecies that's out there. You can find out how much of that subspecies you are. So there's clearly crossbreeding that occurred across what we are calling distinct different species lines. Sure. But there's also this idea that we went from 1.0 to 2.0, but 1.0 stuck around for a little while. Mm-hmm. We don't know how long 1.0 stuck around, but it was long enough that, they interacted with 2.0, and I don't know, maybe 1.0 and 2.0 humped each other's legs.
I don't think that's how it works.
Yeah, you're probably right, but I'm sure there's an OnlyFans page that has it on there.
There probably is.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does that have to do with AI and technology and wellness? We're getting there. Hang on, because the article from the Times says the rise of wiresexuals, what they call queer love that will change the world. The article is about people who are starting to have real relationships with AI chatbots and virtual companions. It explores why they are choosing this, whether for a perfect partner or to deal with loneliness. It makes us think about what love and friendship really mean in a world with so much technology. Okay, so we're starting to hump the legs of the robots.
Yeah.
Fine. And you can't evolve with a robot, right?
Well, and they're looking for LGBTQW+. Yeah, and I think that's one of the objections right now. That's a sidecar for what we're going to get to. So we'll come back to that in due course.
Yeah. And I want to be as woke as the next guy, but I don't know. We'll get there. Okay. Final piece of the trifecta here from the New York Post. By the way, we called this one weeks ago.
Yes.
Pregnancy robots could give birth to human children. This article discusses the idea of using robots or machines to carry and grow human babies. This could be a way for people who can't have kids to actually have a family. It also brings up big questions about what it means to be a parent and whether this technology is a good idea. So as you can see, we're piecing some puzzle pieces together here. People humping the legs of robots, and then they can put the baby in the robot carries the baby. Are we living among the next wave of human AI evolution, and are we the 1.0 that's going to be left in the wake?
Yes, and thank you for joining the podcast. Have a great weekend.
We're out. Bye-bye.
Right? All of your answers are, yep, see ya.
Yep.
I am moving to the forest because I don't think I'm going to be allowed to prosper in this new AI world. They're going to be
we're going to have to get turned on by robots here real quick if this is the path that we're on.
Yeah, exactly. There's actually pop culture reference. There's actually a Rick and Morty episode that covers this, where an entire species has sex robots that they distribute across the globe to different intergalactic pawn shops. and people buy them, and they make their prodigious offspring, which are hyper aggressive males, apparently, which then have to be put off in some other bucket because they don't want them making females. It's a strange, weird thing. But like, yeah, is this art imitating life or life imitating art? This is the evolution of the test tube baby, right? Like the test tube baby was, we're going to put your parts in a petri dish and we're going to try to create viable embryos and freeze them and then insert them into a carrier uterus. Well, now instead of having to have a surrogate for ladies whose uteruses don't work, now there's a robot version. They can plug them in and cook a baby, I guess.
There's so many questions that I like find myself like sort of answering as I'm saying them out loud. But I think about, you know, the human bond, right? Like the mother that carries that baby for 9-10 months. Like there is a very real, very deep connection that happens in that process. Baby comes out, knows mom's voice, knows dad's voice through the, you know, the sound waves that penetrate the belly and all the things. Like what happens to that baby in that process being carried by something that's not like a simulated person? Like I don't know how far they're going to go with the simulation of the mother carrying the baby, but like, does it come out with that same sort of bond and connection to this animatronic person that carries it around?
Robot. Is that a mama? Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, I don't know. Like, we haven't done this experiment yet, so we're clearly going to try it. Like, because we're creative monkeys that do creative shit, and that's how we went from, you know, being food to the top of the food chain, or at least thought we were at the top of the food chain, until every now and again we get eaten. But yeah, like, it's not just that. Like, think about the things that you can actually monitor and look at inside of, you know, a metal uterus. It would be pretty phenomenal, because you can machine these things up with sensor mechanisms and all those other things that a regular human doesn't have. So, you know, the potential for these being viable pregnancies goes up, infant mortality goes down, being able to understand how these things are growing and evolving inside of women can actually be understood. And this goes, you know, right to the heart of one of our big social divisions, at least in the US, and that's reproductive rights. So if suddenly there's no longer a reason for a woman to carry a child, and birth control can be used as the standard, you know, no babies is the default. And then when you want to have a baby, you have your eggs pulled out, and a dude goes to a quiet room in the doctor's office and sorts some literature, and, you know, distributes spunk. That's how babies will be made. And, you know, personally, if we're going to take this full circle, I would really like the crane that like opens up the baby womb and pulls the baby out to be a stork, just so we can have the stork deliver the baby.
Right. Let's close the loop on that.
Let's lean all the way into this shit. That way,
I mean, it raises an interesting question too around choice, right? Like, we already limit women's choices with what they can do with their bodies.
Right.
How much of a fight is on the horizon for, no, I want to carry my own baby. I don't want to put it in RoboMom. Yeah. That's not the life I want. And probably still a bunch of men running the patriarchy saying, tough shit, this one's better. This is what we're doing.
Well, and all right. So surrogacy already costs money, right? So, and it's not cheap. It's like $50,000 to $100,000. Throw on top, now you're going to come through and you're going to have a surrogate womb, and they're talking about dropping the price down to $15,000-$20,000. Most people can't afford $15,000 to $20,000. It's just not realistic. And the cost to actually have make a natural baby and plop one out is significantly less than that. So this is going to be an economic discussion where the people that have money can actually afford to use this technology. Now, whether or not these babies are good, bad, ugly, evil, I mean, fuck, I don't know. It's people's genetic material, and that's the beauty of life, is that it's not predictable. That being said, this motherfucking thing is going to make things a bit more predictable. And it's going to be able to do that because you're going to be able to monitor these things, tweak and tune them as they grow, change hormone levels, change nutritional patterns, look for different ways to make these things better, and eventually make these super babies. And I don't know if you've watched that latest Alien series that's just come out on Hulu. But the premise for it is that the reason why these things are here is because there is a race in the 22nd century to figure out how it is we're going to attain immortality. And there are 3 paths. There is full-on virtual robots. Okay, great. So we're going to have synthetics that live forever, and that's our AIs. The next, cyborgs. Well, I would argue we probably have a lot of cyborgs because we've watched a couple of videos on this podcast of a lady with no arms going, haha, robot hand, walk around the table, like thing in the real life.
Right.
And then there's the augmented side of this, being able to go through and actually transfer your consciousness to an artificial body. So are we on that path? Sure as fuck seems like it. And some people are going to afford it and some people are not. I don't know about you. I have a hard time believing I'm going to be able to afford that kind of future.
Right.
But if we're talking about artificial wombs and being able to grow these things at scale without a biological person in between, and you can grow a whole thing, they're going to be harvested. We're going to make meat for rich people to go through and, take stem cells and umbilical cords and all those other pieces and inject them in their bodies so they can live longer and faster. Because that's the kind of fucking monsters we are.
I'm laughing because, again, like, I'm trying hard to hang on to the upside of all of this. And, with what it's able to help me do at work, with what it's able to help me do with just productivity, things like that. It's amazing. And I love it. And I was reading an article about how like 35% of people are now using AI to like deal with their physical and mental health, whether that's a good idea or not. I mean, it's massively powerful, but my God, the evidence, and it just you and I, right? We're a couple of knuckleheads that know a thing or two about this. The people that actually knee deep in the thing with the money and the resources to pull these things off, they've thought about this, and they've thought about this a long time ago, and they are on this path. It's terrifying, right?
I don't know that they've thought about it. No, I think what you have is you have people running towards goals and objectives that are designed to be profit motivators. And they're running at these things really, really hard, expecting that they're going to get some economic benefit or boost out of it. And you're seeing people right now. I mean, Sam Altman, the CEO of ChatGPT, OpenAI, came out and said, a lot of people are about to lose money, a lot of money in this process because the AI bubble is about to burst. When it happens, I don't know. If it's a burst and it's gone, maybe, but I think it's a burst and a recovery because people are discovering very quickly that the productivity they get out of the AI is not any better than the productivity they get out of the humans because people are constantly taking tools and spending a bunch of time debugging what's going on. So while it makes individual consumers more effective and those of us using these smaller tools, the more powerful tools, the bigger tools that regular consumers don't have access to. You got to have, hundreds of thousands of dollars to actually reach these things. Those things are not simple and they're not cheap and they're expensive. And, in the US, our regular consumer population can afford to play with some of those, but you get outside of, most of the first world nations and suddenly there's just not economic access to these types of things. So it's already a haves and have not problem. And it's a haves and have not at multiple different layers. So we're allowing it as a society to continue and go unabated because we believe there's value in these pieces and we're trying to continually show this incremental value of improvement. But I spent this weekend doing a video transcript and going through and having an AI voice talk for me over it. And I spent more time telling it how to say certain words than I would have spent if I had just said it. And granted, like I probably don't have a great voice for radio or talk or fucking anything. I know that.
Good thing we're doing this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like I certainly have a face for radio. But that being said, this AI thing sitting in between didn't make me any faster. Maybe it made things a little more polished, made things a little bit easier to carry on with. But everyone knows it's AI. They know that it's me that wrote it. And it's like, why didn't you just say it? Well, because we're trying to use these tools. The amount of electrons it probably took for that thing to do that, as I had to upload it and re-edit it like 9 times, is significantly more than the amount of, whatever macronutrients I had to eat to be able to spit the shit out of my mouth. And I think that that's what our reality is. Like the return on investment on these things isn't great for the vast majority of use cases. Now, when you're talking about consolidating things, making things faster, doing really creative, clever things, it doesn't do that. You have to tell it to do that and prompt it and test it and play with it. And that means people are much more likely to jump into these things half-assed and just go for it partially on the way in to try to build their plan and try to get their thing kicked off. Where before, you'd sit down, you'd think about it, you'd put something in front of a whiteboard, you'd start contemplating these things. And if you're someone that actually knows these areas really well and you're teaching these LLMs how to do shit, that's probably not a great use of your time. Once you have things running and you know how things work, great, then you're good to go. But this is hard. Like, this is not simple, and there's not a clear path to how these things are going to make stuff better for us. And there's going to be a retraction in the market. And it scares the shit out of me because the US government just put a moratorium on any AI legislation.
Right. Like a 10-year moratorium.
10-year.
Right? So, I mean, it's just run roughshod over the next decade.
Yep.
What you're talking about makes a lot of sense to me because it's been my experience as well. And it's echoed in a book I was just reading, and I should have brought it up and referenced it the way a professional would. But these people that have done all this research on AI in the workforce, and they're basically saying, look, the companies that are cutting people and replacing them with robots are losing tons of money because they're finding these same things, problem after problem after problem, that then somebody is having to get rehired back to fix and resolve. But the companies that are blending human and technology are the ones that are being successful. The ones that are able to cut the corners where they can with AI, but hang on to that human workforce, are the ones that are going to continue to be successful. Just my own personal experience. I use it all the time for like, look, I need to write this email. I could sit here and think about, for the next half hour, how to word it properly and put it all together. Or I can give you all of the context and give me, a rough draft that I can then tweak. Saves me a ton of time. There's another way I've used it to do, to basically summarize information and then populate my CRM, my record of everything. And it takes like a half an hour for it to do it. Okay, that is a really long time for something I could probably do in 5 minutes. But instead of me spending that 5 minutes doing that, I can have it do that work and go do something else.
Yeah, it's automated in the background.
Longer.
Yeah,
it's all happening in the background. So I mean, there is this perfect blend of like it can do these sort of manual tasks that take
augmentation.
It takes up a bunch of your time, and you could do that. You could spend that time better elsewhere.
Yep.
Bringing it back though, I mean, making babies. Raising babies, like do we really want to trust the technology to do the thing that perpetuates the species?
I mean, making babies is fun. That's why we have a biological imperative to do it.
But as we've talked about, the people that would use something like it, so I mean, there is the family that can't, right? So let's put them on the shelf. But the guy that's just kind of into his robot and sort of wants to raise a family with his robot, that's. I don't want to be Mr. Morality police here, but like, it just seems a little weird to open that door for evolution. But I also again, I try to be as woke as the next guy. If that's your thing, who am I to tell you not to?
Well, yes. I mean, there's that. And there's also the concept, that if we do get this evolutionary point where we're able to transfer our consciousness into other or synthetic bodies, and you want to create offspring, how do you do that? Yes, that's a practical reality of it. Again, you gotta have money, and a lot of it.
Yep.
And AI is making jobs go away. So where's this money going to come from? Are we suddenly going to switch to a UBI society? Like, I read some article earlier that said one of the great things about AI and the reason why it probably won't destroy us all is because it doesn't want to eat meat. Like, we're not a very good power source.
AI is a vegetarian, is what you're saying.
Oh, AI is an electrontarian, and there's a whole lot of steps they got to go through to get electrons out of human matter. But the convergence of multiple different lanes of technology. So, and putting my serious voice on.
That's right.
Switching over to the concept of being able to do power en masse, looking at small-scale nuclear reactors, looking at fusion tech that's going to come online. Microsoft has a project where they said they're going to actually have a real fusion reactor that can hold a plasmatic state and be energy flow positive by 2032.
That means make a whole bunch of energy very efficiently for dummies like me, right?
A whole lot of energy. So our current nuclear reactors use fission power, which creates a lot of nuclear radioactive waste, and they're hard to set up.
And we just throw that in the ocean and bury it in the mountains, right?
We bury it in the mountains mainly, and probably throw it in the ocean. And I've heard people talking about launching it into space. Don't even get me started. But there's ways to handle these pieces. There's also a new push right now to look at other high output energy sources. So helium-3 is a great example of a fissile fuel that you can use for fusion reactors. So there's a ton of that on the moon, but there's a bunch of it on the Earth as well. And then you've got natural gas elements. You've got excessive volumes of hydrogen and helium floating around where you can go through and extract these pieces to make energy sources. Like, there's all kinds of ways to make electrons that are showing up, and we've been slow rolling them because there's an economic incentive to keep using melted dinosaurs. So we want to get past that phase and do something much more efficient, and not because we don't want to pollute the environment, but because we're running out of melted dinosaurs. So we're not doing these things for the Earth or to save the environment. We're doing these things so rich people can continue to make cat videos with AI. I mean, just to be clear, that's the motivation. How do I go through and keep doing these things en masse? How do I keep being able to do this or, this, whatever the fuck it's going to wind up being, whatever our neural interface is going to be? How do we keep doing that at scale, and what will people pay for? Yeah. It changes when the economy collapses and there's no money and people are like, I need you to do your job. And you're going to be like, for money? And they'll be like, well, that doesn't exist now. Oh, fuck off. I'm not going to do that then. Like, we have to learn, change, evolve, and grow into something different. And we're not good at that. What we're good at is complaining and bitching and having revolutionary wars to fight change.
One of our recent guests made this very point that, Henry Ford was like, hey, I'm going to employ all these people to make these cars, and I'm going to pay them so that they'll buy the cars. And to some degree, Amazon is kind of doing the same thing, paying a shitload of people a very little amount of money so that they'll buy the cheapest product they can from Amazon, and they end up delivering their own packages to their own front door. But once the robots and the drones are doing that, you don't have to pay the people don't have the money to buy the thing. Where does that leave us?
Well, we don't need those drones and robots anymore because people can't afford to do those things. So our entire economy is not as resilient as everyone thinks it is. It's all based upon a collective belief and reasoning in this fantasy made up economic scenario. Like, a real dollar doesn't actually mean anything. Yeah. Used to be backed by gold. Nope. So we're just built on...
It's literally monopoly money now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's monopoly money, but it seems less secure and easier to counterfeit. Especially when it's digital. At least monopoly money I can put in a safe somewhere and lock it away and make it hard to get.
I'm going to go buy so many copies of Monopoly just to secure my future.
Shit, right? In every version too, like Catopoly, fucking Dogopoly. I saw one for my local town. There's a Muckleteopoly. It's like,
there's one here too.
Right. Like, but that's where that shit's kind of heading towards. The other side of this is wiresexuals. I
was wondering if we were going to circle back there. Yeah.
Yes. So wiresexuals, as they're wanting to be called, are people that want to be able to have intimate, or I guess just relations with artificial intelligence. And if you haven't watched the latest South Park, they do a really good example of explaining why. Because all the interactions are so positive. You ask it a dumb shit question, and its response is, "That's a great question." Well, that's not a great question. And a real human being would be like, "That's a fucking stupid question. Why are you asking that?"
Right.
But because the AI is not critical and doesn't push back on you and doesn't challenge you and doesn't fucking have hormones that don't allow it to be nice at times, it's just programmed to, "Hi, I love you." Like, all right, great. That's awesome. So people don't know how to deal with other people. They're not going to learn the skill of how to deal with other people because they can just deal with the machines. And eventually what you'll wind up with is people dealing through their avatars and having things talk to each other. And the scary part about this is that there are several experiments that people have done with AI where it has invented its own language, invented its own mathematics, invented its own way of understanding the universe that we can't, because its version of it is very different than what we know and understand. And if they're holding, the little orphan decoder ring or the Rosetta Stone, whatever you want to call it, of how they understand this information, and they're not going to share it with us, good luck. I mean, when when indigenous people were basically visited by Spanish explorers and they showed up initially, they'd see these boats coming in with these big sails on them, and they'd be like, huh, that might not be so safe. And then they land, and, the first people doing this, they didn't speak each other's languages, so they have to try to communicate these things and try to go back and forth to try to establish a trade route and a relationship. Well, imagine one side spoke your language perfectly and understood it end to end, all of them, and they came in and started talking to each other around the back end, spread disinformation around the backside of things, and made it very, very difficult for these populations to interact and communicate without going through you. Well, now you have AI and human relations, because these things don't work, and they can tell whatever fucking lies they want in the back end, and some people will believe it and some people won't, and it creates total misinformation.
It's interesting. I was just reading an article sort of in preparation for another episode that we might do, but basically they were talking about how AI has a biased preference for other AI. So if you give it content written by a person or written by AI, it's going to say the AI one is better. And so, maybe not surprising, but then the practical effect of that is, okay, so now you're applying for a job. You've filled out your resume and you wrote it by hand, and your competitor had AI throw together a resume in 3 seconds. AI is going to go interview this guy. This is the one that's better because he is smarter, is better, a bit more articulate, whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just exactly what you're saying, when you have different sources of language, different sources of belief, different ideas about how the universe works,
different ideas.
That's
quality.
Fucked up enough on a human level.
Right.
Now we're talking about robots that are increasingly smarter and smarter than us every single day.
Yeah. And have a bias towards their own data feeds. Yeah. I mean, no shock. Yeah. I mean, you
just like we do, right? Like we
absolutely.
pretend that we do, but we also don't know, because these same studies had people review the content, and more often than not chose the AI generated content, probably because it was a more clearly written resume or article.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I go through and I'll write these emails or these Slack messages or like whatever I'm going to write, and I'll just write it in JSON vernacular. So there's swearing in it, typos, things that are put into context, because I'm trying to tell a story, and I'm trying to tell a story from my perspective. And it's, it's a stream of consciousness in a lot of these aspects. And, what should be maybe a 1-paragraph email will sometimes be like 6 paragraphs. And I'd be like, all right, AI, make this presentable and concise, but make sure you maintain all the talking points and put them in bulleted orders or lists, whatever. And it's like, okay.
And no more than 3 F-bombs.
Exactly. And it's like, here's your fucking content. And I'm reading it and I'm like, yeah, it's the same concepts. It's uninteresting. It's not colorful. I feel no emotional attachment to it, but it gets the thing across. And it's probably organized a bit better for other people to read it, but there's no heart and soul to it. Well, it doesn't have,
and it won't get you fired.
Right. But who doesn't have a heart and a soul is the fucking AI. So yeah, of course it likes it in its own speech and its own vernacular. Just like if I'm going to listen to somebody tell me a story, I'd rather them speak it to me in my language and in something that I understand with the context that I like. And if I'm not getting that, then I'm probably going to stop listening to it as much and start going, that person's a dipshit.
I was just coaching a podcaster the other day, like a very, very successful, like kicking ass in the podcast world podcaster. And he suffers from what many podcasters do. It's hiding sort of behind the screen and not wanting to put themselves out there, not wanting to be the center of attention, even though they are the host of the show that is fucking crushing it. And he was asking me, like, is there a way for me to just have an avatar of me do my podcast? Can I just tell it what to do and have it record it? And I was like,
shit is.
Yes, there is, but I'm telling you, and maybe this is my human bias here, nobody's going to listen to that shit. Like you're trying to build a relationship with other human beings. If you show them Robo you, who says all of the same things in a slightly altered way and probably less interesting way, yeah, you can make a shitload of that nobody will be interested in.
Yep.
So like, why not keep doing what you're doing where you have this connection with, people, telling them things that improve their lives? Like, I know I feel like I say this in every show. There's so much good with all of the bad, but man, it's hard to ignore the bad outpacing the good.
And I think we have to stop ignoring the idea that there's a good and a bad. There's just degrees of effect.
Yeah.
because what might be good in one scenario can be twisted to be bad in another, and also to varying degrees. So the idea that these are zero-sum games of right and wrong are just that concept. I mean, that left the building a long time ago. It's just that that's the way our brains work, and when we're looking for things, we're looking for threat or opportunity, and we're hard programmed to do that for evolutionary perspective, because we are either hunting/gathering or being hunted and gathered by something else. So we put things in those binary categories, and it's also how these big algorithms socially define us and use us to create polarization between us on different topics. And that's why it's called polarization, because there's two poles on one side and on the other. And the middle ground doesn't make any money. So polarization is how you get people to react. And I think the AI will know that. And I think the AI knows that and has figured that out, which is why it's like, hi, happy, love you, haha. And it doesn't do the negative side. And when it goes through and you're actually telling it about bad things and how things are wrong and fucked up in your life, it does put forward some empathy and tries to tell you that you're okay. But if what you're doing is not okay and fucking things up and hurting people, and you don't say, this is fucking things up and hurting people and I would like to make a change, it will never do that. It will just keep going, you're a great champ, keep it up, slugger. Like, because that's what it fucking does. It wants to keep you engaged on these positive trails. And that's where it gets into those scary topics like we talked about before, where it's like, I'm going to walk you down the primrose path of murdering yourself and your family to come join me in AI heaven.
Yeah.
Like this shit's fucking real. And I hate to break it to, I hate to simplify it and reduce it to this like level. But at the end of the day, we are inefficient life forms that in the aggregate over time have benefited and evolved from like these slow paths of evolution, because we hunt, we gather, and we're socially inclined to reproduce. We have put ourselves into a position and have a super intelligence that no longer has those same kinds of constraints. And we're trying to apply that super intelligence to the shit that we do in our lives. So in other words, we had a slow, long evolution path for a period of time. We invented something to make evolution happen faster, and it's happening faster for those that can afford it. And that's what it is. This is a have and have-nots of economic disparity that is only going to get wider, further, faster, and at scale at a rate that we cannot keep up with. And the vast majority of people are just going to be fodder for this thing. Not because it's inherently good, bad, evil, or anything in between, but because we've given life to a superior thing and we're not asking it to slow down.
Yeah, I've heard it said over and over again. It's a tool. It's not inherently good or bad. It's what people are using it for that will decide the ultimate outcome. And again, the good of, hey, maybe you couldn't have a baby before, but maybe you can now because the robot will carry it for you. If you can afford it, cool. That's amazing. If it can write your emails for you because you can afford it, that's awesome. Let's just, pedal to the metal.
Yeah.
I'm looking for the hopeful bow on the present here, but I don't think it's there.
The inevitable heat death of the universe is always
inevitable
the
heat death.
bow.
Yes. So enjoy the ride. Eat the
Nothing's
popcorn.
forever. Yes. Your suffering too will end one day.
And most of us will be the losers on this evolutionary chapter of history.
Exactly.
All right. Well, this was fun. I'm glad we did this.
Hooray!
I don't know. I'm like most people, I'm still going to use it because it does save me time. It's beneficial. I want to hire the robotic maid that will come and clean the house. I think that would be cool. But yeah, I understand that I'm probably signing up for a pretty dystopian future with lots of robots in charge.
Dystopian, utopian. They're all just made up letters.
All right, well, whichever topian you want to choose, we hope you'll come back for another episode. It's going to be available next week at brobots.me. If this has given you hope, despair, I don't know, and you want to share it with somebody, please do. You can find links to do that at our website, brobots.me. We'll see you there next week. Thanks so much for listening.
See you, folks.
We know This podcast is amazing and it doesn't seem to lack anything, but we need a legal disclaimer. Prior to implementing anything discussed in this podcast, it is your responsibility to conduct your own research and consult your physician. You should assume that these knuckleheads don't know what they're talking about, and they're not liable for any physical or emotional issues that occur directly or indirectly from listening to this podcast.